We got an economics professor from Holy Cross who can reflect on the business of the Paw Sox. Whoever would have thought that we need an economics professor to reflect on the business of the Paw Sox? But then Ben Mondor passed, and his lovely wife and widow had to sell, and we've got a new ownership group, and they've got the proverbial figurative gun to the head of Rhode Island, or they're leaving. We'll talk about that with I'm going to talk about that with Victor Matheson, Dr. Victor Matheson from Holy Cross today. He was in town. You may have seen him already in the news because the Blackstone Valley Tourism Council did a little thing today with Mayor Grebian of Pawtucket, talking about all the arguments to keep them in Pawtucket. Fleeting arguments as they are. Welcome in to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. Thanks for tuning in. Let's run to the rundown and check on a couple of items that we're going to chat about first. Right? Unbelievable. Nobody expects this. Defending the investigation. The circus of the NFL and Tom Brady continues in, well, that fashion. The local hospital has learned a terrible lesson. They didn't need the jury to say so, but the money hurts. Holy cow. Yeah, that's what one rep just got, and he's all good about it. Seems just wants to get back with his life. I hope the constituents have something to say about that, and your state of mind is important to us. We always like to see what you have to say about plenty of things, and so we'll check in on that as well. Alrighty, let's dig in here. I hate to start with this, but this is what the entire nation is certainly covering and talking about. The headline kind of speaks for itself. Prayers are absolutely warranted here. I don't say that in any kind of pedestrian or casual fashion. I just don't know what else to say other than, my goodness, God bless those people. Here's the latest from CBS on the injuries and the like.
One train car is mangled. Others are on their sides or turned over after an Amtrak train traveling to New York City went off the tracks on a curve in Philadelphia. NTSB investigators are on the scene examining the wreckage to try to determine what went wrong.
Keep crawling, okay? Where am I crawling to?
Passengers described chaos as they tried to make their way out of the mangled wreckage.
This is a nightmare. I saw so many head injuries and, bloody faces, and, people were really injured. They were thrown out of their seats.
More than 200 passengers were taken to hospitals, many with broken bones. At least 8 are critically injured.
And luckily, I heard just here before our recording time for this afternoon and this evening's broadcast that the 8 critical are expected to make it. The emergency response was pretty good. It just goes to show you how important disaster training really is. No one ever expects when they're taking an allegedly Amtrak ride to have that happen. All too often we have these train accidents, and I don't know what to say about it other than God bless. You know what's amazing is that people these days actually have the wherewithal to start videoing what's going on inside an Amtrak train derailed. It's a different time, but it's hardly the thrust of the story, right? Next story, the defending investigation concept here. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Tom Brady in one way, shape, or form for quite some time. Here's the CNN headline. All right, now the lawyer that the NFL hired to investigate this entire football Deflategate thing is, well, he's speaking out. He's very upset about the way he has been positioned.
They wanted me to get to the bottom of the facts. And all of this, discussion, some way that people at the league office wanted to put some type of, hit on the most popular, iconic player in the league, the real face of the league, it just doesn't make any sense. It's really a ridiculous allegation.
What's ridiculous is that the investigator is now making a public defense of himself. This NFL it's a circus right now. It's out of control. By the way, last night I went on for a while recommending to Tom Brady what he ought to do to, maintain his legacy. I had a 5-point plan. Well, if you saw it, throw it out because he's not paying attention to it, and I'm not going to waste my no-charge consultation on Tom Brady. He just hired another high-powered lawyer to fight this thing. So he is not going to be conciliatory in any way, shape, or form. He's going to fight to whatever finish this thing comes to, and who knows. Record award, you'd think, wow, this must be neat. Not really. Headline, Yes, negligence at Rhode Island Hospital a while back. This is tough. So a man from Exeter comes in and he's got a head injury, and 7 doctors and 2 nurses missed the diagnosis, resulting, reportedly, at least the jury thought so, that they were responsible for his brain injury and his wheelchair capacity. That's what insurance is for. But it goes to show you that you've got to keep asking questions. If not you as the victim or the injured, the person that is taking care of the victim or the injured. Never be afraid to ask questions. Not that they were germane to the case. I'm just saying, even though doctors and nurses look infallible and you trust them because you feel like they're somewhat infallible, the truth is they're humans, they're not, and it's okay to question your care in an acute way or even a non-acute way. Tough lessons that any hospital, not just Rhode Island Hospital, have to learn. This is a lesson learned, I think, but not really based on his tone. I don't know if Joe Almeida, the state representative from the south side of Providence, was just nervous or what. The headline here, all he gets is a $1,000 fine and probation for misusing campaign funds. He had about $6,000 or so that were questioned, right, in his campaign fund. His books weren't very good. I think he was mixing personal and finance records, which is never a healthy thing. But maybe you think this is, I don't know, do you think this is obstinate? Here he is in court as this whole thing gets resolved.
Your Honor, this is one of the few times I ever raised money. I acknowledge the fact that my books may have been shabby, but I still care about Southside. Yeah, I'm a politician in front of a camera, in front of a mic, but I truly care about my community, so I'm just here to get this over with so I can go on with my life.
Oh, geez, you know what? Because it's all about them, right? It's always all about them. I hate to make that kind of generalization, but with politicians, all too often, it's about them. I would hope that the people of the South Side will find another state representative when the next election comes around. Joe Almeida is a good guy. You know, I've known him on and off for quite some time. Very pleasant. A little golly shucks-ish, if you know what I mean. But that was a combination of the latter and a little bit of cockiness. Hopefully, there's enough talent in the South Side to raise up a newly elected state representative, because this kind of nonchalance over that kind of record keeping, well, it's not worthy of the people in any district, never mind the South Side of Providence. Your state of mind is important to us. 228-1886 is the number to give us a voicemail. Email us, Facebook post, tweet, that kind of thing. We got a couple of interesting voicemails on the Brady situation. Here's a short one first.
What about the officials? They handled that ball throughout the entire game. Shouldn't they get some fine as well? Thank you.
Well, don't worry about it, Art. By the time this whole circus rolls around, they'll be fined. The hot dog vendor will probably have some kind of repercussion for this. Which one? All of them. Why not? What a zoo this whole thing has become. And then you get the listeners who struggle with some concepts.
If the baseball guys when they do something wrong, got to be punished. I think the football guys should be punished too. I think Brady should get punished.
I asked Jess, my esteemed producer, and Kevin, my director tonight, what she was trying to say. Did you guys figure it out yet? Jess says, well, Jess told me in production, pre-show, she said, well, whatever. Now she's deducted that the viewer doesn't watch sports. Is that what you think, Kev? Is anything come to you? Any response that I can offer to that? Kevin drew a blank too. Sometimes you just gotta leave it there. When we come back, the Holy Cross professor tells us about what's good and what's not so good about the Paw Sox proposal. Stay with us. Alrighty, so quietly and weirdly now, the Paw Sox are moving into the neighborhoods. We just had a program last week with a member of the Providence City Council who was asking for a meeting how to put a resolution together to suggest the Paw Sox come in and talk to the legislative branch of city government in Providence, and that has not yet happened. But there was a meeting last night. Here's the headline on that. The neighborhood group. This would be the people who live and toil in the jewelry district, as it's known, near the 195 land. They had some things that they wanted to say. Jim Skeffington, the president of the Paw Sox, did too.
The conclusion of all those experts was that the site that we had identified was ideally suited. It wasn't just a great site, it was an ideal site for a ballpark.
Dr. Matheson, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You study, as part of your economics expertise, sports stuff, right?
That's right, and specifically the economics of sports stadiums and big events. And so, of course, here in New England, we maybe have some big events coming up, and of course, we've got a stadium issue here in Providence, don't we?
So this is right in your wheelhouse. Your gut check on this deal is what?
The stadium that's being proposed looks fantastic. The site looks great, but there's no reason to believe that the Rhode Island taxpayer should be paying the bulk of that money.
People don't have the time to do the homework on the history and what has been the trend for the last 10, 15, 20 years when it comes to financing stadiums. So we rely on you to give us a little perspective. What's the norm these days? The shared responsibility, if you will.
Well, so over the past maybe 2 decades, before the Great Recession hit, we had maybe 2/3 of all stadiums being financed through public money, through taxpayer pockets. In minor league baseball, even more than that. So between maybe 1990 and 2006-ish, maybe 85% of all minor league stadiums were built with public money. And the sort of money that the Paw Sox are throwing around here for a new stadium in Providence would be about 85%. Now that's what has been done. That certainly doesn't mean that that's what is right, and it doesn't mean what makes a good investment of taxpayer money.
Well, so what happened in the 2006-ish era? Folks started counting the beans and figuring out, does it make any sense? What?
Yeah, what we had is, of course, in 2007, 2008, we had the Great Recession hit us, the Great Financial Meltdown, and all of a sudden people started saying, you know, maybe giving millions of dollars of subsidies to billionaire and millionaire owners as well as millionaire players isn't the best use of our money, especially when we're laying off teachers, we're laying off firefighters, we're laying off police officers.
Do you think people are actually making those calculations?
Well, I don't know that they are, but I certainly know that what we were seeing in the major leagues is we were seeing about 2 or 3 new stadiums every single year between roughly 1990 and the Great Recession. And essentially those stopped immediately once the money dried up in state and local governments all over the United States.
The essence of the first ask, as we now call it, the first ask of the Paw Sox, of the people of Rhode Island, is we want the land for free. We don't want to be taxed. We'd like the state to lease the land and the stadium for $5 million a year, and we'll lease it back for $1 million a year. It's a net $4 million to them. I would suggest to people that you and I'm sure you're substantial, but I'm guessing that you're not, as an academic guy, probably not worth billions or millions, but you and I could probably go into a bank and with a guaranteed cash flow of $4 million from the state, we could probably borrow a ton of money and name the stadium for ourselves, right?
That's right. So if we have good credit, good business credit, we should be able to borrow somewhere in the vicinity of maybe $60 million if you give us $4 million a year and you don't charge us rent on the land and you don't charge us property tax. So you're talking about $60 million there roughly being able to be financed. You're only talking about a $75 to $85 million project. So again, what you're talking about here is just in that $4 million per year payment, being able to pay for roughly 2/3, 3/4 of the stadium.
Some people say, well, the folks who want to see this thing happen would say, well, listen, you only put 20% down on your mortgage anyway, so what's the difference?
Well, the difference is I only put 20% down, but then I make the payments on the other 80% over time. It's not like I'm requiring someone else to make my mortgage payment for me. And of course, I still have to pay the property tax on that house too, don't I?
What's your guess? We haven't been able to get the financial records from the Paw Sox in terms of historicals or even what's happening now. But what's your guess the cash flow of a AAA franchise like the Paw Sox is annually?
So that's hard to know exactly, but as a rule of thumb, rough guess, they make about $20 from every person who walks in through the gate from either ticket sales or from concessions. So they're making about $20 on every person that's there, and so we have that as a rough guess. And we also
$20 in gross or net?
$20 in gross, and we also have another roughly 600,000 people walking through that stadium. So you're looking in the ballpark of maybe $12 million of stadium-generated revenue, plus maybe a little bit extra here and there. So that's really a guess on my part. I haven't seen their books either, but we're probably not way far off on that.
Stadium naming rights, advertising.
Throw in some in-stadium advertising, throw in some naming rights, throw in a little bit of media money, not a ton, but you know, you could bump that number up a bit. But you know, 12 million is a number that ballpark enough, I think.
So the size of, I mean, so the physicality of this project versus the actual gross revenues of this project, they don't add up. I mean, it seems to me that anybody that wants to invest in minor league baseball is doing so either as part of another brand, and with the Paw Sox having Red Sox ownership in this thing, it starts to make sense that way. But the truth is, this is not a big moneymaker in any way, shape, or form in any market USA, right?
This is not a huge amount of money in terms of what the owners have put in and what is being generated.
Not to interrupt you, they play the players like crap. I mean, they don't pay them well at all.
Yeah, until you get to the bigs, you're not making anything playing baseball, that's for sure.
But it is, so it's a cash flow business off the capital expense chart, right? So if you can get the stadium at a pretty great rate, you can run a profitable business.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no doubt that that's the case. And if I could also put in here, what the evidence suggests is when you get a new stadium, you can charge a couple bucks more per ticket, which doesn't seem a lot when you're talking Boston Red Sox ticket prices, but a couple bucks a ticket for Paw Sox tickets, you know, that's about 20% increase in tickets. And over the course of 10 years, you're probably likely to see an extra 1 million people come through your turnstile. Put that all together, and you're probably talking a new stadium is going to generate you, for 10 years at least, maybe $2.5 or $3 million more per year in revenues. And so, of course, if you're an owner, you're looking at trying to get that $3 million extra a year in revenue, especially if you can get someone else to pay for that stadium that's going to get you that revenue.
All right, so when we come back, we'll talk about this whole rub between whose benefit is it, the owners or the community? Stay with us.
We need something, a share in the profits, some upside, something for the money we're going to put forward.
Here's what I need to know. Short answer. Are we this close, or that close with the Paw Sox?
With the present deal, not happening.
Yeah, see, that's where we last left the governor in this, Professor. This is, so we should stop talking, I guess, about the last ask from the Paw Sox, because the governor more or less is ixnated, and the Speaker of the House is a little tentative himself, even though I think he's trying to run this deal. That's my political analysis. The weird thing is that they're now doing neighborhood visits. They're asking the Paw Sox fans to sign on to an online petition to drive momentum in the legislature, and nobody knows what the new idea is and how to finance it. It's weird.
It is a bit weird, but I think even the Paw Sox ownership is saying, look, that first ask really went over terribly in public opinion. Usually you can find at least a large number of people lining up, maybe not everyone, but you can find a bunch of people lining up saying, oh, what a great thing for the city. Of course we want to do everything we can to invest in our community. And boy, you know, up and down the line, it's just been a negative reaction. The governor, the speaker, you know, local leaders.
So now you're left with the question of, you know, how do you put a deal together? Here's what the governor said about the worth of this project.
We have to figure out what's it worth to us. Like, what's it worth to us? If I'm going to put one dime into this, the question is this the best way to spend that dime to create jobs in that land? So if I think it's going to create, making up a number, $50 million of economic value, then I might be willing to invest $50 million of the state's money. And then the way you do that, we can figure it out.
Can you help her?
Yeah, so this is tough, and I think one of the good things going on is there have been some now independent economists not hired by the team. That would be Andrew Zimbalist coming in, being hired by the by the legislature to take a look at exactly
From
that.
Smith College, another guy that's that more than dabbles in this field and is highly respected.
Highly respected and generally fairly critical of stadium subsidies. We'll see what sort of numbers he comes by in. I'm not saying I'm going to agree with what he comes up with, but he's certainly an independent voice that this is not a rubber stamp, spend whatever you want of the taxpayer money.
Well, he was hired by the Speaker of the House because the Speaker needs his own consultant if he's going to get in the middle and kind of run this show. Are you for hire? Have you been hired?
I have not been hired by the House.
Are you looking for a gig? I mean, everyone's going to need a consultant by the time this whole thing is over.
Look, I would be happy to be doing the same job that Professor Zimbalist is doing. I will say, however, that when I saw that he was being hired, I said, okay, you're going to get a professional job here, so that's nice.
Blackstone Valley Tourism Council convened today. I'm sure some of your thoughts will be on our news coverage. They're still trying to hang on to the Pawtucket idea.
So here's the deal, is that a stadium in Providence, if there was one available that was brand new, state-of-the-art, would be a preferable facility, almost certainly to Pawtucket. That being said, there is no stadium available in Providence right now, and to build one is going to require $70–80 million of someone's money. And if it doesn't come from the state, it's not clear that the owners will prefer to put out that sort of cash when they have a usable stadium right there.
The owners are saying it's $65 million to redo McCoy, which makes me scratch my head.
I think it's $65 million to redo McCoy in the way they want to do it, or you could spend nothing to redo McCoy and you could play baseball like it's been played there for the last 75 years.
They want out. I mean, they've left the altar when it comes to Pawtucket, so they say. So while Mr. Skeffington seems to be still pitching the Providence deal, he's more or less hinting or suggesting his partners have no emotional tie to the city of Providence, and it could be anywhere in New England.
That's true. It absolutely could be anywhere in New England, but it's not as if there are tons of beautiful, state-of-the-art, empty baseball stadiums that have just been waiting for the right team to come along. New Bedford says they want to be in the deal, but they don't have a stadium. Worcester doesn't have a stadium. Springfield doesn't have a stadium.
No, but Springfield's got new casino money, and my bet is if it's not Providence, it's Springfield.
So certainly Springfield's a possibility. They haven't had minor league baseball in that town for about 50 years, since their last stadium burned down, actually. So that's certainly possible. Mind you, that doesn't mean that baseball has left Providence forever at that time. That means that Providence will be the largest metropolitan area in the United States without either a top-level sport in any of the other sports or at least a AAA baseball team. So that's pretty ripe.
The Red Sox parent organization would rough up anybody that tried to come into Providence, though. It would be a tough business thing to do.
It would be a tough business thing to do. That being said, it would also it would look very, very poor, both legally and in public perception, if you remove a team and then don't even let a replacement come in.
All right, give me a prediction. Give me 20 seconds on what you think is going to happen here.
I think they're going to stay in Pawtucket for several years at least. And I imagine a stadium deal will be done in Providence eventually, but at a much lower ask than originally came through.
All right, we'll continue to be in touch with you. Appreciate your expertise.
My pleasure to be here.
All right, we'll come back. One more thing, stay with us. You know, my big question on the Paw Sox deal is, are we going to get the next version of the public ask? Or is that just going to be done behind closed doors and kind of like slam, bam, the rest in the legislature? Who knows? Stay tuned. Tomorrow night, Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee will be here talking about his efforts to seek feedback on small business environment, and feedback's not that good. So what can you do to improve it? We'll see you on the radio at noon on WPRO and back here tomorrow night.